Welcome and thank you for joining us today for the AI Advantage, how IT leaders are redefining operations in 2025. My name is Raleigh Gould and I'll be moderating today's event. Our featured speakers are Dan Twing, President and COO from Enterprise Management Associates, and Karthik Sj, General Manager of AI at LogicMonitor. Dan joined EMA in 2005 and has over 25 years of experience in information systems, software development, and technology outsourcing. Dan focuses on all aspects of intelligent and automated management of IT. Karthik spearheads LogicMonitor's artificial intelligence for IT operations initiatives and generative AI strategy. He joined LogicMonitor from Icera, an enterprise GenAI company, where he led the global product and go-to-market teams for the last 5 years. Prior to Icera, he held a variety of roles at SAP. You will receive an email from Enterprise Management Associates later today that will include the on-demand playback, a link to download the slides, along with some additional resources, so be sure to check that email out. And now I'd like to go ahead and turn things over to our first featured speaker, Dan Twing. Dan?
Thank you, Raleigh. Well, this is a great topic, and we're going to start with just a very high-level key findings, and then as we move through this data, we'll drill into some of these in more detail. But right now, the state of AI use in this capacity is about 68% of organizations have AI tools in their IT operations environments in various capacities. 63% have achieved proactive or dynamic maturity, and we'll spend more time on later what that maturity model is. It's a model EMA has used for years, and how we ask folks to both self-assess their before AI and after AI states. And we're really seeing the benefits. 59% have exceeded their ROI goals, and another 47% has seen a reduction in incident response times. So there's a lot of good happening here. We're going to drill into these data points in a little more detail. So first, focusing more on the adoption, as we said, 68% are using AI in their IT operations. The bigger drivers there are automation, anomaly detection, root cause analysis. Those tend to be where the focus is at currently with the state of the tools as they are. And after I share a couple of data points from a survey that we ran, Karthik is going to give us some specifics about the LogicMonitor solution. So this 68% that are using their AI tools, if you look at the chart on the left there, the blue line is the currently using. And GenAI is probably the most used at the moment. There's a lot of helper chatbots and things that exist. It was probably one of the earlier places where we started to see AI come in. Of course, machine learning also has fairly well adopted and mature and have been in use in a lot of places in a lot of different tool categories for a while. Whereas LLMs and natural language processing, some of the other things have, and large action models, the agentic stuff, that stuff is newer, not as well adopted, but that 68% number really comes off of the highest adoption we've seen, which is in the category of GenAI at this point. And then when we ask folks, when do you expect your organization to consider AI-assisted tools? So for those that weren't already using them, right? Our survey was about 484 people that answered they are using them. We had 24 who were not yet doing it. And that's much smaller group. Within 24 months, most of them expect to be having tools, AI tools deployed, if they're not already doing so. We also asked, how do you currently use AI tools in operations? And really the biggest value, I mean, it's a wide range of functions, and they're all, 34, 35% responses up to almost 50%, that half of the group. But the biggest use right now is more operational insights, followed very closely by virtual assistants and incident management, root cause analysis, anomaly detection. They're all right there at the top, all lumped together pretty high. And the 24 who aren't using these tools yet, we asked them, how do you expect to use them? And those results are almost identical. anomaly detection floated to the very top, which was only like, the fifth one when we asked the group that are actually doing it. But those planning are anticipating anomaly detection, root cause, all the same things, just slightly different order. And I imagine once they have experience, they'll probably start to look more like the other group. But Karthik, why don't you tell us what you guys are doing for organizations to help achieve some of that?
Thank you, Dan. Thank you for the setup. And this is a super exciting time, like you said. And I've been doing AI for a while, but I think AI, when it's paired with the right use case, is extremely powerful. And I think IT operations is exactly the right use case where this technology can shine, right? And so when we spoke to several customers, and LogicMonitors, is really at the forefront of hybrid observability. I mean, these are complex deployments, large scale enterprise customers where it's mission critical. And one of the common themes was there's still a lot of manual work that's happening when it comes to triaging alerts, trying to make sense out of it, trying to get it to the right teams, trying to do a root cause. And so we saw a lot of opportunity here to really inject this technology and optimize the workflow and tie it to some of the large business outcomes that companies are trying to achieve. So the very first use case, Dan, we really focused on was event intelligence, and that's really about how do you take all these noise in the system, events coming from LogicMonitor, and also pair it with third-party sources. And this is across the whole stack, right? So it doesn't have to be just on the network or the infra. It could be from the APM layer, and then making sense out of this in terms of like, hey, what is the major incident in this flood of alerts, right? And which ones exactly do I need to take action on? Which one is actionable? So those are things that we did, and that's a really good use case to start with, because who wants to look at 3 a.m. alerts, right? I mean, this is not something that's a fun job, especially in today's times. You want to unlock the time for more, complex, creative problem solving as opposed to doing alert triage. So that's the number one use case, and we really reduce the noise in customers' environments. Then towards the end of last year, we launched our first GenAI agents, and I joke about it that agents is going to be more overused than AI in 2025. But it's really about how do we unlock productivity, and then the third use case was about automation, is how do we close the loop. So the two products that we have are really event intelligence and GenAI, and most customers start with one and then they quickly start with the second use case. But today we're seeing many customers start with both in parallel, and kind of where we are heading towards is more early versions of self-healing and automation, where if you have identified self contained run books that really don't cause any risk, customers are open to letting AI execute those automations and do and take some of that heavy lifting off the engineer's time.
And you were going to talk to us about one of your accounts, yeah?
Absolutely. And I think this year is all about AI in production. So last year was all about AI pilots, and that's great. And many vendors can show a good demo and do a good pilot. But what's going to make or break a difference this year is whether you have these customers in production and they renew with you and they're seeing tangible business value. Because yeah, there's so much AI hype out there. It's really about like, hey, let's go back to the business. Let's go back to the business fundamentals. Where is the ROI? What exactly can we go back and recognize, right? So we are super excited to say that some of our customers are already past that cycle. They've renewed. They are seeing tangible business value. They're trying to expand. But the reason why, Syngenta, again, they're a large agri-tech company with over 6,000 devices, is they saw value within an hour of deploying Edwin,
Wow.
right? So this is not like, hey, let's deploy it, let's come back in 6 months and then do another 3 months bake off. No, this is like right away they start seeing the value. That's something that caught their imagination and really excited the team. In fact, one of the early adopters even told us that Edwin pointed out to a config change that their team had overlooked 3 years back. And
Wow.
so as soon as they pointed out, they reduced the alert noise. but they've seen a tremendous impact in terms of the noise reduction, MTTR reduction, and also the whole team has been repurposed to do more, I would say, level 2, level 3 tasks, as opposed to doing the basic triaging of alerts.
So the 80% reduction in alert volume is, I imagine in part there's fewer issues to alert about, but a lot of that is, are you just through prioritization and automation, meaning that never has to reach a human? Or maybe you can, yeah, okay. Yeah, it'd be
It does a
interesting
lot
to
of
see.
it does a lot of deduplication. Again, if you look at a SD-WAN flapping issue, those just generate a bunch of noise, and without any tool, that's just passing through your ITSMs and creating a bunch of incidents. Now with an intelligent layer with Edwin, it dedupes it. It tells you exactly how to correlate those alerts. So there's less number of incidents the team has to pay attention to.
Yes. And so, looking more at that operational impact, one of the things we learned in the survey that we did is 63% of organizations now classify their IT operations as proactive or dynamic. We talked about that, as one of the key outcomes. And I'll talk more about our model here in a moment, and also how, where they're finding that value in real-time insights, in faster incident resolution, and in predictive maintenance is the things that got risen up. And some of that lines right up with what Karthik was just telling us. And then we'll learn a little bit more about what LogicMonitor's capabilities are there and the outcomes. This is a maturity model that EMA developed years ago, really kind of, it applies to a lot of different things. It's kind of service management or customer focused. So really, it begins with that reactive stage, right? And most people are past this now. Years ago, we used to talk about trying to move from reactive to active and so on. Today, most people are living in that proactive and trying to achieve with the AI, the dynamic stage. But really, when we talk about reactive, we're talking about you're really in that sort of crisis mode. You're reacting to everything. Your management investments are very isolated. You don't really have the diagnostic tools and so forth. When you achieve active, you're not just responding to alarms, but you've got more monitoring going on. You got a little more management. You're sort of, more on top of things. Whereas when you reach the proactive stage, you're really managing to the service. You're looking at the what are we actually delivering through things like predictive analytics and machine learning algorithms and other things. You can begin to head these things off before they become critical. And in fact, I think some of what you were just talking about with reducing the number of alerts is because you're living more in this proactive state, and you're dealing with things in a more real-time manner. And dynamic is really where you start to manage to the business, and things are this is where we get to more self-aware systems, maybe even self-healing. Whether you have sort of a recommendation with a human in the loop to finally approve the action, or whether you fully automate the corrective action, when you start achieving that, we put you in that dynamic category. And so that was actually shown to the survey respondents, and we asked them two questions there. First, rate where you were before you had AI tools to help you. And that's the blue bars here. So you can see it sort of peaked at the active medium. And I just, I'll back up for a second. I asked them to score it sort of low, medium, and high within each of those four categories. So there were really 12 possible responses in that regard. And you can see then that active medium, that middle group, was really the high point at about 18%. Another big group being back there at reactive high, which really I would hope people are well out of the reactive stage in this day and age, but some don't operate there. And you can see even before AI tools, there were a handful that would have put themselves up in that dynamic category. They may be overstating where they were. But what's interesting here is the green bars, which is what happened after you deployed AI tools. And you can see pretty easily that the biggest group jumped from that active medium to proactive high. I mean, that's like a category and a half, moving forward. And we see a lot more organizations saying that they feel like they're in that dynamic category with 14% saying, you know, I've achieved dynamic high. And again, I would have to say that they might be overstating. Maybe they don't understand what's yet to come. But I would believe that if they think they're there, they're probably have some automated actions that are helping them resolve things. And you saw how quickly benefits accrue to the customer that Karthik was just talking about. So in fact, maybe some of these folks are actually getting that big of a benefit. But there is no doubt that AI tools help people jump ahead in their maturity of IT operations pretty significantly in pretty short order by leveraging these kinds of tools. We also ask, how do you measure AI success, right? So beyond, I clearly fit a more mature category in EMA's model. What we're seeing, 80%, I'm sorry, 60% said increased productivity of IT staff, 49% faster root cause analysis and resolution. We have reduction in incident response times, improvement in system uptime. I'm surprised this one's as low as it is, but enhanced user customer satisfaction probably has a lot to do with how long they've had access to the tools. I think what I've noticed is the longer people use these, they tend to rise, the actual end result, customer satisfaction, ultimately comes up. In the early going, what you're noticing is what it's doing for you. Eventually, the customers start to realize how much better things are, and it shows up in customer sat results. And finally, what are the technology goals for adopting a platform that uses AI in your IT ops? And here we limited them to 3 responses each. And so what floated to the top from that was anomaly detection first, faster root cause analysis, and predictive capabilities or predictive analytics. You know, all of the benefits are there, but really anomaly detection and faster fixes is kind of really where folks are focused. Karthik, I imagine that lines up with what you're seeing, and I know you're going to talk a little bit about what some of the value drivers are to achieve those kinds of results.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. And this is a great testament that the technology is not out there, right? It's something you can take advantage of today. And I advise the customers like, hey, this is not fiction, this is AI reality, and you can take advantage of it. It's a no-brainer almost in my mind, because the volume of this is so high. Some of these tasks are so repetitive. The pain is so high. You're talking about folks who get woken up at 3 and they get into a war room, and they got to make sense out of it. They got to investigate. A lot of time is wasted, and there got to be a better way now with the technology that we can take advantage of on how do we improve the lives of some of these engineers, and also make it more fun and make it more really on top of the game. And so that's kind of what we're trying to address in terms of like, hey, not only are we avoiding some of the stuff, but we're trying to make it more fun. And we've been talking to many clients, and the ROI is so compelling. One with, like I said, you're talking about millions of alerts, breaking it down to thousands, right? So that's something you can easily quantify, go back to the business and say, hey, here's kind of where we're seeing the value. The second one is on productivity. And like every AI tool out there, it's about, how do you make it work alongside your NOC engineers and make it more productive. So instead of asking a question and logging into 5 different tools, I could just ask the AI and it's going to break it down for me and like get me these answers right away. And so we are seeing a lot of productivity improvement. And some customers are even practical about it. They're like, hey, if you give me 30 minutes of time back a day, that's a win, right? That's all they're asking for. 30 minutes of time per engineer of time back. And then I talked about these war room costs where, I've heard customers with 200 people in a war room, or, in the case of one CrowdStrike incident, it was like 1,000 people in a war room. And guess what? They're probably just 10 engineers who will actually fix it. A lot of other folks are like probably giving context. You can dramatically cut that down. You don't need those 200 people war rooms anymore. And you can also make the experience a lot better where the AI agents can do the investigation for you. Imagine joining a war room with a lot of the hypotheses pre-prepared, right? So that's kind of what we're talking about, Dan, where it's a whole new experience. And then obviously helping reduce those problematic areas where the team has ignored a lot of the years over, like, and say, hey, if you make this config change and tune this device, maybe you get a bunch of alerts and outages taken care of, right? And then
Right.
obviously consolidation of your tools. Less incidents means you need to pay less to the vendors. You need to hire less people for those kind of jobs, and less training of all these applications. Yeah.
Well, I can imagine. I mean, I started my career, as an engineer, developer, and on call with, when things break. And I mean, I can't imagine how nice it would be to get woke up, in the middle of the night with a problem, but have in front of you, here's what we think it is, have the AI already synthesize it and go, here's where you probably ought to start looking. I mean, rather than, being in that daze and trying to get your head around it, boy, it just puts you, it's like you're already up and running, right? Somebody did all the legwork for you
Exactly.
when you come to get involved. Have you heard stories from people like that? Because I can just imagine how nice it is to walk into a problem with already having ideas about what the solutions are.
And that gets people like, wow, I'm not starting from scratch. And that gets, the engineers, like somebody's got their back. And so we want Edwin to, have their back and help them with productivity and really focus on fixing things as opposed to spending time in logging into systems and doing the bare bones investigation.
Absolutely. And so, yeah, and then here's another one of your accounts you were going to share some points with us.
Yeah, and we cater down to both large enterprise customers and MSPs. In fact, right now, significant conversations we're having with managed service providers. I mean, they are under a lot of pressure, right? I mean, managing several clients, making sure they meet their margins, a lot of OpEx efficiency at play here. So they're looking for any help they can get. And we undertook this engagement with Nexon last year. They went live in like 12 weeks. And once they went live, and we were like, hey, so what do you think? And can we do a case study? And like, yeah, let me just get a handle of the metrics. The moment they saw the metrics, I mean, they were ready to do a case study or whatever they needed, right? So it was extremely interesting to watch from caution to enthusiasm. The moment they saw the metrics, like you're talking about a nearly 70% reduction in their ServiceNow incidents, right? Think about
Yeah.
that. And as an MSP, now you're serving so many clients, and you don't have to look at all these alerts, and you can be on top of your client experience and really give them more proactive expertise. And so we've been collaborating with them. Again, there are some great use cases. They're down in Australia, one of the large MSPs there. And how do they even connect to third-party sources? So they've been talking to us about getting some of the signal down more upstream. So if you have power outages that are happening through the Australia power grid, getting access to that and proactively notifying the clients on potential ISP outages or power outages, right? So that's why I say it's so exciting that it's not just about alert noise reduction, but it's really about this whole proactive piece and giving people a simple language interface to talk to this telemetry data.
Yeah, I think, part of it too is just having some of that synthesized and put into an easier form for you then to do what you need to do as the human expert, right? So all of those benefits do fall to the bottom line. And when we asked about ROI, I'll show you the actual survey question here in a moment, but we had 59% who exceeded their ROI expectations, 47% really realized faster incident response. We did ask them what are they measuring to make sure that they know how it's going. We'll talk about that. Really the AI-driven outcomes, the cost savings, the uptime improvements. And then Karthik's going to give us a little more on what their actual users are experiencing. But in the survey, we said, have you achieved your ROI goals from implementing? We didn't really ask them what their goals were, but whatever they set as a target. And you can see here that really, the biggest group there, 59% were on the yes, we've met our goals, or even 20%, so almost, a big chunk, almost half of that first group, yes, we have exceeded our goals. And that there's that group in the middle, 32% said partially, we have achieved some of our goals. And we don't know here how long they've been up and running. So, you know, if we came back and revisited those folks in 6 months, they might have moved up one notch in that. But we only really have, you know, 9% on the bottom end here that, you know, either I'm not sure, or it's too early to tell, or 5% have said, no, we haven't achieved it. But that's a pretty high success rate. A lot of times, you know, things do not turn out this well. This is an area where the benefits accrue once you get the thing up and running, and your staff learns to use it and take advantage of it. Folks are seeing those benefits. Here, how do you measure AI success then? What we really see here is increased productivity of IT staff is a metric that they're all looking at, and 60% said that they've achieved that productivity gain. Again, the concept that, you know, getting to the root cause faster, finding the resolution faster, 49%, reduction in incident response times, and so on. So, you know, we've seen these benefits accrue. And, you know, when we get to, you know, that doesn't come without some challenges, right? But you know, let me pause first. And Karthik, is there anything you want to add on what you're seeing in terms of the ROI and what benefits people are really getting?
Yeah, I joke that, you know, ROI should really be RAI, return of AI investment. This is just so top of mind for many companies. There's so much AI washing going around that, you know, it boils down to fundamentals and like what they can realize. And, you know, not all AI is equal. And so it's really important to, like I said, pair it with the right use case. The more the pain and the more the complexity, and then that's where AI can really shine. And so absolutely, yeah, this is kind of what we're seeing. Productivity is top of mind. Some of the budgets are flat, it's not growing, and they got to do more with less. And you know, it's all these areas of the workflow. If you can optimize and give some help, I think it's going to be very well received through clients. And they're not looking for perfection. That's the other thing. Dan, I'm when I talk to customers, they're looking for something that's 80% good enough. It's like, yeah, you hire a junior knock engineer, you know, 2 years, 3 years experience. Yeah, they're going to make mistakes. Like, I think it's interesting that we are extremely hard on AI being perfect, but we are a lot more tolerant on humans being imperfect with the things. So that's just something we realized.
Yeah, yeah. And, you know, getting this right, there are, you know, there's always challenges with complex IT, even though, you know, lots of folks are getting benefit. One of the things that folks have struggled with is implementation complexity is a key barrier, and struggling with data integration, and really just the sheer number of tools and tool sprawl across teams. Of course, you know, Karthik is then going to share with us a little bit about how LogicMonitor can help to unify that. So we one of the questions we asked was, what are your biggest challenges with your current platform? And they could pick up to 3 of these, and implementation complexity was up front. And again, you know, this was a global study of about 500 people, and you know, they're all using a variety of different tools. And the thing that floated to the top was complexity of implementation first, data integration issues, which is very common with anything to do with AI, because, you know, it's only as good as how it's been trained and how it, you know, how you feed it to get the results you need. And so getting the right data in the right place is often a challenge. And, you know, it does not come without cost. I guess, you know, if when you really understand the ROI, is it necessarily all that high? I mean, you know, but certainly they ticked that one here. And you can see some of the others: lack of collaboration between ops and DevSec. You know, those are more some of their internal things. But really the big 3 and really the big 2 that you can focus on is that complexity of implementation and that and the data integration. So when we said what important features are missing from the current solution you're using, and again, they could be using, you know, any number of the products that are out there. You know, they'd love to see more work around data integration and improving the data, simplifying the implementation, and you know, some of these tools maybe aren't scaling so well, and so on. I think, you know, from here, I don't know, Karthik, what you certainly know what your product roadmap looks like. You know the battles you fought early when you first released this, and you probably listened to customers and enhanced things. So what would you add here in terms of where we're at and where it can go to make that startup ramp even easier for folks?
Yeah, great question, Dan. One of the things we're realizing with AI products in production, is it's not something like traditional SaaS where you can just, throw it over and, let the customer figure it out. There is a lot of experimentation with AI. There's a lot of back and forth that happens. There's a lot of understanding that this AI is not perfect, but we work with you to improve it. So we actually have an applied AI team, Dan, that works with the customer to keep improving the quality of some of these AI outputs. So and we set the right expectations so that, yeah, if you talk about a root cause analysis or a AI summary, we work with them, and the team is having some of our AI experts with domain experts and the customer giving us rapid feedback, getting that flywheel going is something that we do, which is so critical for you for the last mile. It's the last mile problem that is there with AI applications, because people don't have a problem with getting a demo and doing a POV. It's a last mile where it is. So we have actually had this setup where we work closely with customers to kind of offer that value realization. And in terms of where things are going, we're seeing a lot of customers opening up to the idea of self-healing, automation. Again, they're doing a lot of that today already, but it's like, hey, can the AI just take the 10-20% of incidents off my plate and just do the scaling the servers, right? Or like restarting the servers, kind of things like that. So those are use cases people are more open to than they were like 2 years back.
Yeah. And I think, this is one of those areas where which partner, which tool you choose and how they can support you can radically change your experience. And so somebody who's focused on it as you all are, can make a big difference in what this ramp feels like. So, this is where I think it's key to make sure you're picking a team, like the folks here with LogicMonitor who've worked through this with customers. They have a long legacy of this before AI, and they figured out and are still working on how to make your startup time and keep it dialed in and focused correctly better. And I think it's really a place where the tool you're using can radically improve these challenges or make them, even bigger hills to climb. For the future trends, really, AI-driven IT operations trends shaping 2025. I think more on the predictive analytics, seeing systems really kind of move more and more in that autonomous direction. And in some cases, helping to explain or making the AI explainable why it, provided the answer or the recommendation or took the automated action it did. Here, of course, we'll be looking, for Karthik to add color on that as well. We asked them, is your organization planning to increase investments in AI-driven IT ops over the next 12 months? And you can see there that, 81% are in those top two bars there. 59% said, yes, we're going to increase. Another 22% significantly increase. You got 18% who feel their investments are appropriate. Very few that are decreasing their investment, right? This is that we're early in it, but it's paying off. And the folks who get a small taste of that, I'm sure, decide to do more. And we asked them also, where do you see the most relevant differences between AI platforms? So between vendors, integration with existing tools. So here again, that vendor choice, you really want to make sure you're understanding what integrations they have in place, how are they working to increase those, and kind of make sure that what you need is going to be there with the tool that you chose. Also, they think there's differences from one tool to the next on how good the AI ML capabilities are, how scalable it is, and how long it takes to get to that value point, how easy it is to use. These are all the kinds of things, any category of software, really, you'll see a similar list like this. And this comes down to, picking the vendor who's best suited to work with what your environment looks like And this is where folks are hoping to see even more improvement. We also asked them, how important do you believe AI will become for optimal operations in the next 12 months? And here the distribution's a little wider, but again, you see a significant majority, 79% are up on the top end, either very important or even 35% extremely important. There's a much smaller group who don't find the importance here. Oftentimes, in any software category we see, there's always a group of that is either late to the party or their operations aren't complex enough to require it. But to see 80% who understand this is going to be important and become more important over the next number of months. I'll pause there, Karthik. You probably believe that because I know you're making a lot of investments in this, and you're right there on the edge achieving it. What are your thoughts on the future?
I mean, this is a very exciting time. I've been in enterprise software for almost 2 decades, and like I would say, this is even bigger than cloud was. It is once in a generational technology. It is going to reshape a lot of the landscape. People are realizing now the potential of some of these models. The models are getting much faster. The vendors are releasing newer models. But what excites me is that we're talking about this huge AI boom, and with that boom comes you need data centers, and that's really where we fit in. That these data centers that are powering the AI boom need LogicMonitor, and to manage the life cycle and operations of all these IT operations, you need an agent, period. Like, you're not going to be able to hire hundreds and thousands of humans to operate these data centers and operations. And so we believe the future is going to be a combination of agents and humans working together to get the least disruption and most resiliency to the business. You cannot no longer afford 5-day outages in the data center. It's not an option. It can cripple your business. So agents are here, agents are coming. It's going to get better. The good news is, some of these issues are system generated, and so there could be agents that can actually fix these issues a lot better than humans can. So we're extremely excited to the possibility and this future of being the agent for IT operations.
And I'm right there with you. I think there's good things that have been done, and there's even better things right around the corner. With that, we'll turn it back to Raleigh for the Q&A.
Great. Thank you, Dan. Before I dive into the Q&A, I wanted to invite the audience to continue the conversation by linking in with Karthik. Also, you can download the full Unleashing AI-Driven IT Operations report and request a demo of LogicMonitor's Edwin AI by scanning the QR codes on the screen. You'll also receive the deck in the follow-up email I mentioned, so you can also access the codes that way. Diving into the questions, Dan, the first one is, how should we balance AI-driven automation with maintaining human oversight in IT operations?
Yeah, I think that's going to change over time. Some folks are using the AI to give them the recommendations to lead them to the answer, but maybe they're not yet ready to let it happen automatically. Others have more confidence in it, or they've gone through a phase where they sort of had the human approval, but it gets you right to the edge of the answer. You check it off and you go. Over time, I think with the right sort of explainable AI and the sort of the after action views of how did the AI perform? Do we like what it was doing? We'll see more and more ready to flip that switch to let the AI handle it, and I'll understand after the fact what it did and why. But it will get resolved faster than a human could get in the middle and resolve it. I don't know, Karthik, do you see clients on both sides of that fence? Some still want that last human checkoff before they let the resolution run, and others who are ready to just let the AI do its thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think customers are cautious, but at the same time, they want to relieve the pain. And there's as long as and the agents can do that, they can really give you suggestions, Dan. And so I think the big change you're seeing is like with traditional chatbot applications and Copilot, it was honestly a bit awkward. Like you're staring at the screen, not knowing what to ask. And part of it was like, hey, what question should I ask? And not everybody's an expert in knowing what to ask if you're troubleshooting a networking device issue. And so now the agents can prompt you, hey, Dan, maybe you want to look at this. And you know what? The previous engineers who are your level 3 experts did these things, and do you want to follow this playbook? And so now you have this dialogue happening. It prompts you. You have you have a checks and balances. You can approve the plan. You can watch what the agent is doing. You can take control at any point of time. So that's the new experience, which I think is a lot more exciting than just AI doing a black box and just giving an output and you're like, okay, what just happened here? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Thank you both. Karthik, jumping over to you, how does Edwin AI's agentic AI ops approach compare to traditional AI ops models?
Yeah, thank you for the question. And AI ops is not a new term. It's been around for a while. It's been honestly, abused a lot in terms of like what it is. And we just want to take a step back and focus on fundamentals. There's been a lot of promises made by vendors and very little delivered in those promises. And so we are trying to put a fresh lens to it. And it really starts with the data. And there's so much data fragmentation. IT complexity has led to a lot of tool sprawl. Each tool emits their own telemetry and its own, you could say, fingerprint on some of these issues. And so you really need to kind of be the backbone data layer and get it all together. So that's kind of what we're focusing on. And the second thing is you cannot really have this rigid rule-based systems that are like, predeterministic. You got to let the AI do its magic and come up with pattern matching and come up with, what it finds. And there has to be a predetermined level of intelligence that gets better. And then you can obviously layer it with what the customer's data is. But we are seeing that, gone are the days where you hire 2, 3 people to care and feed for the tool. You got to let the tool be on autopilot, and the customers are mainly reviewing the performance as opposed to caring and feeding for the tool. So those are things. And third one is really about outcomes, really. So focusing on the business outcomes. We have one of our customers that makes boxes. So the way we look at it is like, how do we make this customer help them make more boxes? That's really what it's all about. It's not about reducing alert noise and reducing MTTR. That's one of those technical benefits. But if you do the 5 whys, ultimately it's about how do you improve the business outcomes, and in some of these cases, make them more boxes.
Great insights. Thank you. Dan, how should we think about measuring success beyond traditional metrics like MTTR and alert volume reduction?
It's interesting because what Karthik just said kind of leads me to that answer. What I've noticed is the longer people use these kinds of tools, the more they gravitate to the sort of business outcome measure from the more IT ops intermittent measures, right? And as you're working your way through it and you're learning the tools, you focus on those metrics first. But with more experience, with more of maturity around the whole program, once you start to deploy these tools, I find that what happens is organizations tend to rise up, closer and closer to their customer, to the end result, whatever the business process's end result is. And the metrics move in that direction. So you're measuring the ultimate outcome. And maybe that's just because being more effective, we actually are moving the needle at the outcome stage more, right? I mean, you can move the needle on uptime, but that might not change customer satisfaction enough because maybe it's a small move or, it's not in conjunction with others. But as everything starts to rise, the focus just moves more to what is the business outcome and how are we doing it, improving that. And I think when you can start looking there, that you're addressing everything, before that well, because your focus is now first and foremost on what's the end result. And you only look back at those other metrics when you really have to struggle to, find that root cause occasionally, or if you're trending something. But yeah, I think what happens is people just tend to they slowly gravitate towards what is the end result this process is supposed to produce in the first place.
Thanks, Dan. Karthik, let's wrap up with you. What advancements in agentic AI for IT operations should we prepare for in the next 12 to 24 months?
Yeah, I keep saying agents are coming, and these are not just like a few agents. I'm talking about hundreds and thousands of agents. And so think about it like, it's like hiring a level 0 agent or a level 1 agent, right? And then with more advancement, you can hire a level 3 agent. And OpenAI talked about it. You could hire a PhD level researcher to do the kind of work. So that's kind of how we see it. LogicMonitor's Edwin AI will out of the box ship a lot of these agents that do a unit of work. And it could be like, hey, go find the anomalies in my logs. Could be one agent. Another agent could be like, hey, summarize these alerts for me. A third agent could be go look at these vendors' public docs for the latest information. So we imagine really a world where there are a lot of these agents working in tandem to achieve a outcome, especially in the case of outages or P1s, some of this investigation and working together. And so, and they're going to get better over time. And, you can layer it with increasing complexity. So the more data you feed it, the more complex investigation it can do. And it's a combination of like these reasoning research work that, war rooms that lasted 5 days can now be cut short to like 5 hours instead of 5 days.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Dan and Karthik, for taking those questions. And I wanted to thank our audience for joining us today. As I mentioned, you will be receiving a follow-up email from EMA that will include resources from today's webinar. So be sure to check that email out. Thank you again for joining us, and I hope we'll see you at a future EMA Research webinar.